What's up, everyone? We're in the month of July. Training camp is a couple of weeks away. It is fantasy football season, and this is Fantasy Football Today here on CBS Sports Network, a special edition, our first time on the network in a long time, and we are fired up for it. Thanks a lot for joining us today. I am Adam Azer. I got Jamey Eisenberg and Dave Richard joining me today. Jamey is sharply dressed in a very fancy button-down. Dave is wearing the shirt of another show. Dave, thanks for the support today.
I thought you were going to say I was dressed like a hobo. Compared to Jamey, we both are.
It's true. Jamey, thanks for showing us up. What's going on?
I can never show you guys up. You guys are just too fantastic.
I agree with that. All right, we're all in agreement on the first point there. Now, listen, today we're going to talk about our favorite and least favorite values based on current CBS average draft position. But first, we're going to start with some big off-season storylines. I got 5 big topics for you. Let's start with number 1. All right, 3 of the first 5 picks, according to ADP last year, were huge busts. Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, and Breece Hall. McCaffrey played 4 games. Tyreek Hill was not even a top 30 wide receiver on a per-game basis. He was wide receiver 33, and Breece Hall was RB 17. So, Dave, who's most likely to rebound? If you had to rank them, most likely to rebound this year, how would you rank it?
I would start with McCaffrey at the top. I would say Tyreek is second and Breece Hall is third. And honestly, upside favors that order as well. If Christian McCaffrey rebounds, he can produce like a top 10 fantasy quarterback. We saw that in 2023 when he averaged 24.3 PPR points per game. He even averaged over 20 non-PPR points per game. I think anybody that's interested in that type of production, they know they can get it from Christian McCaffrey. All he has to do, Adam, is stay healthy. And a point to last year. It stunk when he was hurt last year, but he rehabbed the injury. He's good to go now. He took part in OTAs. I'm kind of optimistic that in his age 29 season, CMC will have a very good year.
And Jamey, how would you rank it in terms of most likely to rebound? McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Breece Hall.
Yeah, same order. I think you look at, obviously, McCaffrey, if there are no issues, he could easily be the number 1 player in fantasy non-quarterback. He's a top 7 overall pick for me, so I really love the upside and the potential for him coming into the season. And we saw last year that older running backs can still have a lot of great production, with guys like Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon and Alvin Kamara and all these guys that were still able to produce. Aaron Jones at a very high level last year, despite them getting older, for a position that typically doesn't allow those players to perform well at this age. We have to probably shift the goalposts a little bit. I think for Tyreek Hill, though, we're starting to see a big rise for him for how the fantasy community will value him, especially after the Jonnu Smith trade. So now he hopefully gets a boost in targets back to maybe the level that he was at 2 years ago. He's talking again about a 2,000-yard season. He came into camp in better shape, or at least OTAs in better shape. He's talking about seeing a therapist, getting closer to his religion, and doing all these things to sort of rehab. I think not only his on-field performance, but also his image. So as long as he's healthy, good to go, I think there's big bounce back potential for him. Breece Hall's the one that scares me the most. I think he has a chance to have a solid season, but I don't think he gets back to the level that we saw 2 years ago. You've already heard Aaron Glenn, the new head coach, they're saying that they want to use 3 guys. I don't think that's going to come to fruition, but with Justin Fields there and stealing a lot of that rushing production, on top of the fact that we probably won't see a lot of work in the passing game for Breece Hall, he's somebody that makes me the most nervous, especially of this trio right here.
Okay, I'm just going to throw it back to you guys. Jamey, then Dave. Just give me an approve or a disapprove. My first 3 picks are Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, and Breece Hall. Approve or disapprove? Jamey?
Disapprove.
Yeah, I think you're going to be a little too old there. Long in the tooth, Adam. I disapprove.
Okay. Okay. All right. Second big topic. Which player is going to benefit the most from a quarterback upgrade this year? Jamey, which player will benefit the most from a quarterback upgrade?
I think it's probably DK Metcalf. Getting Aaron Rodgers has been so good for number 1 receivers. And, I know Arthur Smith and the whole push and pull of who's going to be really in charge of that Steelers offense. But we know what Rodgers has done with his number 1 guy. A lot of that has been Davante Adams, but you look at Jordy Nelson, you look at Randall Cobb. When he has a guy that he can trust, and looking at this receiving core for the Steelers, there's really only one guy I think that you can trust right now, and that's going to be Metcalf. So Malik Neighbors should get a boost with Russell Wilson, but I think as long as there's a healthy Aaron Rodgers and a healthy DK Metcalf, Metcalf could challenge to be a potential number 1 top 12 wide receiver in 2025.
Dave?
I'll go in a different direction, Adam. I'll take the guy that used to be the number one wide receiver in Pittsburgh, and that's George Pickens. When he had Russell Wilson, that was the best of George Pickens last year, 13.1 PPR points per game. It was a very run-heavy offense. It wasn't exactly conducive to what George Pickens' upside is. In Dallas, this is a team that might not be able to run the ball very well, might not have as good of a defense as everyone thinks it will. Dak Prescott's under center. I know he's coming back from an injury. I think that's an upgrade for George Pickens, and he won't be number one on the team in targets, but he's going to clearly be number two, and I could see his production moving up. I think he benefits from being traded from Pittsburgh to Dallas.
A lot of candidates for this one. I agree with you guys. Those are great answers. I think Calvin Ridley is going to benefit a lot. Hoping anyway, he's going to benefit a lot. And his average draft position is so low right now on CBS, 97th overall. Calvin Ridley, one of the steals in early ADP. All right, let's go to our third big topic. So Dave, last year, running back was so in. It was so good. I don't know if it was in on draft day, but it ended up being quite in.
Yeah.
In fact, in full PPR, this is very surprising. In full PPR, 4 of the top 5 non-quarterbacks last year, just in terms of overall points, were running backs. The year before, only 3 of the top 12 were running backs. Last year, 13 of the top 24 in full PPR were running backs. The year before that, only 9 of the top 24. So are running backs back as we look at 2025?
I think they will be, but not to the same degree, if that makes sense. I still think defenses are going to be far more worried about stopping the big pass play versus the big run. We're still going to see a lot of cover 2, still going to see a lot of cover 3. And I think offenses are going to try and take advantage by running the ball a lot. We just had a draft where so many rookie running backs were taken in the first 2 and 3 rounds. A lot of rookie running backs are going to be on the wish list of fantasy managers this year as teams try and take advantage of what defenses will do. I don't think we'll be as lucky when it comes to injuries, though. Think about all the running backs that had a great year last year, and then recognize that literally every single one of them are a year older. That's kind of how time and birthdays work. And if they're a year older, that means that they're more susceptible to injury. I don't know which ones are going to fall off because of injury, but I would be hesitant to say that they're all going to be great again. The bottom line is that they'll still see a lot of carries. Running backs are back until defenses do something about it.
I think the nice thing about it is the position got so much deeper with this rookie class. You know, you bring in all of these talented running backs, and now you have situations where if some of these injuries occur, think about the situation with the Chargers, for example. You got 2 great running backs there. Najee Harris can step in for Omari Hampton. You look at the situation in Denver, they bring in J.K. Dobbins. So if R.J. Harvey doesn't necessarily succeed, they have a pretty capable number 2 guy there. So I like the setup for this position more so maybe than we've seen since that 2017 class. So there's a lot of opportunities here for a lot of great running back situations. And I think the way that we're going to see a lot of these drafts unfold, you probably want to take one of your elite wide receivers early and maybe even 2 or 3. And then you can get some great value at the position round 5, round 6, round 7, and still get a number 1 caliber running back that probably gets drafted in some cases as a 3rd player based on the tier. So there's a lot to love about the position this year. I hope that we do get a lot of great performances from some of these older guys as well, like we saw last year. You know, so again, Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, those type of guys, James Conner, you know, the guys that were either turning 30 or approaching 30 had such fantastic seasons. So to Dave's point, you want to see these guys stay healthy and have another fantastic year, and then some of these rookies come in and support the position. So it's maybe as deep as we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, running back looks good. Wide receiver, maybe a different story because the rookie wide receiver class is not what we had last year. You're not going to get that kind of year from rookie wide receivers very often. But the question is, Dave, I'll go to you first, then Jamey. Who should be the first rookie wide receiver off the board in fantasy drafts? Right now, CBS ADP has Travis Hunter in round 5 and Tedoroa McMillan right behind him, just a few picks later in round 6. Dave, who should go first?
I'm going to follow the cue of the NFL draft and what the Jaguars did. I think Travis Hunter should be the first one off the board. And I think he's probably the most NFL-ready wide receiver. I'm not too worried about him playing cornerback a ton. I think the Jaguars drafted him with the intention of using him primarily as a wide receiver. It's much easier for him to prepare for that position week to week compared to cornerback week to week. And that's where he can be the most impactful in the game. What's the point of pro football? It's scoring touchdowns to win games, and that's how Travis Hunter can help Jacksonville. I think he can average north of 7 targets per game. I think he's worth the round 5 ADP.
I agree with Dave. I think you look at, Hunter as the first guy coming off the board, and I really wouldn't worry too much about him playing defensive back. He's going to get enough snaps offensively, and you look at this receiving corps for Jacksonville, it's going to be a situation where they need him to play offense, so they're probably going to use him on both sides of the ball, but they really need a second wide receiver there. I don't think they want to line up Diami Brown opposite Brian Thomas and say, okay, we're good to go. The fascinating thing for me, though, Adam, is you look last year, we were all hyping up Marvin Harrison Jr., understandably so. But it was Brian Thomas, it was Ladd McConkey, it was some of these guys that were drafted, in the latter half of the first round, the beginning of the second round. Who's going to be these guys that step up this year? The Jaden Higgins, the Trey Harrises, these type of players, the Jack Beshes. Are they going to have opportunities to be significant playmakers and maybe surprise us? So while the class does not look great overall, there's still opportunities for guys to step in and play significant roles on their teams. And let's not forget about the Luther Burdens and Emeka Ibukas, who are in crowded receiving corps. But one injury occurs, or these guys just step up and play at a high level, and we could be talking about some really surprised rookies in this class. So while it doesn't look great overall, there's still going to be some playmakers for fantasy managers.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you said Matthew Golden, but he's in this discussion as well. And then finally, we'll talk about the rookie tight ends. And last year, Brock Bowers was amazing. He was the #1 overall tight end, #2 per game. We got to go real quick on this one, guys. We'll go to Jamey, then Dave. Can Colston, Loveland, and or Tyler Warren play like Brock Bowers in 2025?
No, and I think that's the mistake fantasy managers will sort of fall into, is trying to chase that type of production. But you look at Bowers last year, he was in a perfect situation with a team that just did not have a very good receiving core. The Bears have a very solid one, especially if Burden can step up, and Odunze has a better year 2 than he did in year 1. And you look at the situation for the Colts. Who's the quarterback? That's the biggest question. But you have Michael Pittman, you have Josh Downs. It's just not an opportunity for them to get as many targets. So they'll be good rookie tight ends. They just won't be great like Bowers.
I'm not sure if Brock Bowers will be as good as Brock Bowers was last year, and I certainly don't expect these tight ends to be either. But if I had to pick one, it's Warren, because I think he's got a chance to actually lead his team in targets, catches, and yards, just like Bowers did last year.
All right, fellas, we are just getting started here. We're going to talk about the best values in early average draft positions. Circle these names, put them in your queue. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. Tyreek Hill in the 4th round. Derrick Henry was running back 3 last year. At the 2-3 turn, this is happening. This is happening right now in our early average draft position. We're looking for trends. We're trying to find places that you can take advantage of the ADP and find the best values. Later in the show, we'll do the worst values based on early average draft position. This is in PPR league. So let's take a look at Dave's 5 favorite values as we look at early ADP, and then we'll take a look at Jamey's. So yeah, I mentioned Derrick Henry. He's going at the 2-3 turn. Now, there's 2 numbers here. Average position is on average where these guys are being drafted. Rank is where that ADP ranks. So he's going 24th. That ranks 21st among all players in terms of their ADP. If that doesn't make sense, I'm sorry. I can't do any better than that. I've been trying to explain this for like 10 years, and I'll never get any better than that. But take us through your list here, Dave. A lot of running backs you like the value for.
It's a lot of older players that I like the value for. I'm going to break them up into 2 groups. Let's put Derrick Henry and Davante Adams together. I think fantasy managers are squeamish about taking players over the age of 30. But the way that these guys looked last year and the fact that they're not coming into this year hurt makes me feel confident about them. Derrick Henry in the right spot, absolutely. We saw last year just an absolute beast. Got 14-plus touches in all but 3 games last year, 4 games last year. Should continue to be a big-time role player for the Baltimore Ravens. And then Davante Adams is changing teams. He's on his 3rd team in 2 years. It doesn't bother me. I love where he's at in L.A. It's a great scheme. He can still get open. He can be used in the red zone. I bet he takes over Cooper Kupp's role. You remember how good Cooper Kupp used to be for fantasy? This is a guy that I would take in the top 30, and he's going basically at the end of round 3. The other 3 names, Kamara, Chuba Hubbard, James Conner, they're all going after 50th overall. I would take them all as top 40 type picks, maybe a little bit later for James Conner, but they all have huge upside. They've all performed for fantasy managers, at least last season in the case of Chuba Hubbard. But James Conner and Alvin Kamara, you can go back several years and you can see big-time production. Even Alvin Kamara in New Orleans, that offense, it's going to be kind of sketchy because of their quarterback situation, but that's just all the more reason for them to lean on Kamara, who's still playing at a very high level.
I think the best thing about those running backs is the cost, because you don't want to reach for them. Dave said top 40 picks. That's a little bit too rich for me. I like the kind of spots that they're in. But you see the potential for them to all succeed and all have big seasons. Hubbard's going to get some more competition than he had last year, whether it's Rico Dowdle or Trevor Etienne or both. We'll see how that sort of shakes out. Connor, I don't think you have to worry about competition. You got to worry about age. Kamara, you got to worry about just a horrible situation. And please don't let him throw out the first pitch ever again, as he did in the Cubs game yesterday. But I think when you look at all three of these guys, if you're getting them at the right cost, which is what we're seeing here based on this average draft position, it's absolutely perfect. If you have to reach for him, though, I think you could be in a little bit of trouble.
Well, okay, but come on now. Let me ask you this, Jamey. How confident are you that you could actually throw a strike if you were throwing out the first pitch?
I'd be confident. I don't know if it would be successful, but I'd be confident.
Yeah. He's a little league baseball coach.
I do a lot of batting practice.
I know. Your son would throw a strike.
My son would definitely throw a strike. Absolutely.
Well, I want to talk about Kamara. He's just been so good. He hasn't been that good of a rusher for 3 or 4 straight years now, but he still gets so many catches. So why do you think people, Dave, are waiting until the 5th round to take Alvin Kamara, who has a pretty easy path, honestly, to being a top 5 fantasy running back? I know I'm obviously not going to take him that way, but all he has to do is just catch 80 balls again.
He was a top 5 fantasy running back last year. Why are we ignoring that he averaged 19 PPR points per game in an offense that really wasn't very good last year? And no one's expecting them to be very good this year, but at least they'll be schemed better because it's Kellen Moore as the head coach of the Saints. We saw him work wonders last year in Philadelphia, year before that in LA with the Chargers, and the years before that in Dallas. I think people are worried about Alvin Kamara falling off in his age 30 season. You can go back to my list. A lot of guys on that list are 30 and older. And I think fantasy managers want to get on the new hype train, the younger players, the rookies. Jamey talked in the first segment about all the rookies that are coming in the league, and a lot of them are very exciting, and I will take at least one of them ahead of Alvin Kamara. But I think Alvin Kamara still has a big-time role in the Saints offense. He led all running backs in targets per game last year with 6.4. That's not going away. And one other thing, you remember Taysom Hill? You remember how he used to steal touchdowns from Alvin Kamara? Taysom Hill isn't going to be ready for the start of the season, might not play at all this season. That opens the door for Alvin Kamara to do better than the 8 total touchdowns that he had last year. Age is just a number here. Don't sweat it. You're already getting a discount on him anyway. If he were 27 years old, he'd be going as a top 15 pick.
Yeah, I know. So people are going to say, yeah, I remember Taysom Hill. I also remember when the Saints actually scored touchdowns. So I get it. I know you're concerned about the offense, but it's not hard for any rookie quarterback to just dump the ball off to Alvin Kamara. Okay, let's go to Jamey's list now, the players that he likes, his favorite values, and Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey going 17th. Tyreek Hill, 44th. Well, there, see, now you can get Tyreek Hill with your 4th pick. That'd be great. Courtland Sutton, Jawan Jennings, and Jaylen Warren. Take us through your list, Jamey.
I mean, we spent some time on the first 2 guys. I think McCaffrey is going to be a 1st-round pick. I think Tyreek Hill will end up being a 2nd-round pick, whether it's early round 2 or late round 2. I think as we get closer to drafts and we see more drafts happening, especially, again, following the Jonnu Smith trade, the value for those 2 guys should, probably be cut in half, where McCaffrey again round 1 and Tyreek Hill round 2. The other 3 players I think are just criminally undervalued, or at least being underdrafted. When you look at Courtland Sutton and what he was able to accomplish in the last 2 seasons, specifically last year and the first year with Bo Nix, it's hard to overlook what he's done with Sean Payton. So 18 touchdowns. It's just, we spent some time on our Fantasy Football Today podcast, which you can download and listen to, and I highly recommend. And as I brought up, he wasn't one of the guys that we were discussing in the range of wide receivers. And you look at him by comparison, and whether you like the comp or not, the production is somewhat similar to what Terry McLaurin did a year ago, to what Mike Evans has done basically for the last, latter part of his career, to what a guy like DK Metcalf might be able to accomplish in Pittsburgh right now. So again, what he's done with Peyton, finding the end zone 18 times in the last 2 seasons, what he did with Bo Nix last year, 8 touchdowns. And you look at this receiving core. Yes, they added Evan Ingram, and Pat Bryant could be a nice rookie, but it's still going to be a Courtland Sutton show. And to get him at this spot as a top 20 caliber wide receiver, to me, it's an easy choice. Jawan Jennings can easily be the number 1 wide receiver for the 49ers. You look at Brandon Ayuk right now coming off the ACL tear. Who knows when he's going to be ready? Ricky Pearsall, once again, is dealing with another injury heading into training camp. Hopefully he'll be good. Has immense upside, as we saw in those final 2 games. But the scenario that we saw for Jauan Jennings when guys were missing last year, you go back to that, I believe it was week 3 game when there was no was no Deebo Samuel and no George Kittle. We know Deebo Samuel no longer on the team. He had 3 touchdowns. It was just an absolute monster against the Rams. So there's upside there for him to be a top 20 caliber wide receiver, a guy that you're getting close to number 100 overall. And while I love the outlook for Caleb Johnson could be the best running back for the Steelers, there's no guarantee that Jaylen Warren is not better than him still right now. And we know he's going to be involved in the passing game. He's one of the better pass blockers in the NFL. So Arthur Smith is going to use Jaylen Warren. We'll see if Aaron Rodgers throws the ball to Jaylen Warren. I think there's a huge upside for him. And so to get him after pick 100, he could be a top 20 caliber wide running back in PPR. So format matters for him. So I do think Caleb Johnson should be the first Steelers running back drafted. I love the upside for him, but I'm not overlooking Jaylen Warren, especially at this cost.
And here's the thing about Jamey's list. Those first 2 names, McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill, their ADPs are going to go up, man. Everybody's going to see McCaffrey healthy and back at 49ers camp. He might end up having an ADP inside the top 5 by the time we get to Labor Day. And Tyreek Hill, Jamey talked about it, round 2 pick, probably closer to late round 2, but I think fantasy managers will warm up to him. Those other 3 names, I don't think that those ADPs are going to go up at all. We're talking about Courtland Sutton at the 5-6 term. We're talking about Jauan Jennings and Jaylen Warren. That's like round 8 range right there. That's immense value for guys that can return pretty good upside. In the case of Jauan Jennings, he averaged 14 PPR points per game last year. A little inconsistent. He could be more consistent this year because he could be the number 1 option in San Francisco. And if Jaylen Warren is the number 1 running back in Pittsburgh, then we're talking about a guy that might be able to get 15 PPR points per game. That's exciting.
What's interesting to me, Jamey, is that the CBS drafters have drawn a clear line. Ricky Pearsall, 83rd. Jauan Jennings, 97th. They're going Pearsall. What's your take?
It wouldn't surprise me if Pearsall's better. I mean, draft pedigree certainly favors him, but I think Brock Purdy showed last year how much he relied on Jauan Jennings, and I think we'll see Kyle Shanahan do the same. So it's worth taking a chance on both those guys because with Brandon Ayuk maybe missing the first 6 games of the season, if not longer, while George Kittle's going to be the best pass catcher there, these 2 guys are going to be very prominent and very featured. So everything changes with McCaffrey back, and you saw what this offense was 2 years ago. Purdy was better. He was 2 points per game better as a quarterback. So I think we'll see both these guys heavily involved in terms of Pearsall and Jennings. I prefer Jennings just because I think Purdy will as well, and I think Kyle Shanahan will give him a few more opportunities to touch the ball. Plus, Pearsall's got to prove that he can stay healthy. Forget about what happened early in the season with the gunshot wound. Coming back from that was obviously an amazing story. I just think as we saw at Florida, as we're seeing now, soft tissue injuries could be a little bit of an issue for him, and I just hope he's healthy coming into camp.
All right, when we come back, 5 quarterbacks in the first 40 picks. Come on, is this your first year listening to or watching our show? We don't love that. We'll tell you our least favorite values after this on Fantasy Football Today. Lamar Jackson is going 18th overall in our early average draft position on CBSSports.com. That's a little bit too early for us, but if he scores 30 points a game or even 27, 28 points per game, it will be worth it. We're going to take a look at some of our least favorite early draft values here. Let's take a look at Jamey's list. He's got 5 guys to talk about. Dave's got 5 players to talk about. Lamar Jackson. We're going to talk about the quarterbacks in general here, but Jackson is on Jamey's list along with a couple of Jets who were huge busts last year, and Travis Hunter and Jonnu Smith. Jamey, what are you seeing here?
I think when you look at the quarterbacks, especially the difference where Jackson's being drafted comparatively to Allen and then Daniels and the sliding scale for Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts, it just seems too much of a reach. While he was amazing last year and probably should have deserved the NFL MVP, he was a fantasy MVP. Asking him to score over 30 points per game and have that much of a difference between QB1 and QB4 or 5, to me, is just not worth it. The Jets, I think, are just getting drafted too soon. I don't know if it's a New York market driving these guys and the price tag up. The addition of Justin Fields, I don't think is necessarily a huge benefit for these players to make them get selected where they're going. For Wilson, while he may perform like DJ Moore did in 2023, when there was the Justin Fields to DJ Moore connection, and while Fields and Wilson were college teammates, I think Garrett Wilson's better served as a round 4 pick where some other receivers are going after him. Specifically, he's being drafted ahead of Davante Adams, Rashee Rice, and Tyreek Hill. I would definitely have that trio ahead of Garrett Wilson for sure. Breece Hall to me is not a guy that's going to benefit with Justin Fields because of how he runs the ball near the end zone and what he does not do in terms of throwing the ball to his running backs. Travis Hunter, again, I think he's going to have a solid rookie season and should be the first rookie wide receiver drafted. But I would rather have Courtland Sutton, who's going after him. I'd also rather have DJ Moore, who has an average draft position behind Travis Hunter. And then I took the low-hanging fruit with Jonnu Smith. I think we'll see his ADP fall. But if you're still considering him a number one fantasy tight end based on what he did last year, going to Pittsburgh, where he is going to get Arthur Smith a little bit while Smith loves him, we'll see Pat Freiermuth. And I don't think that Aaron Rodgers will throw the ball to Jonnu Smith the same way that Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins did. So Jonnu in that spot is just a little bit too soon.
I want to remind everybody of what DJ Moore did with Justin Fields in 2023. It was 19 PPR points per game on 8.2 targets per game in 13 games with Fields. So when you're that number one guy and no one else is really a number two guy in an offense, I think you have the chance to put up a lot of volume. And I think that's what people are banking on with Garrett Wilson. I think the ADP is a shade too high on both him and Breece Hall. But I think if you really wanted these guys and you took them in round 3, it's not the end of the world. And in the case of Breece Hall, yeah, his touchdowns could be compromised. That's obviously a big problem. But his efficiency could go up. It's going to be a little bit harder to slow him down when he's got a rushing threat in Justin Fields working alongside him. I think the Jonnu Smith call is an easy one. He's outside of my top 150 now that he's in Pittsburgh. Travis Hunter is another one that I think is just about right. Maybe a little bit hype-induced to take him in round 5, but I think he could be worth it, especially in PPR. I could see him being a short and intermediate guy for Jacksonville. So Brian Thomas Jr., he takes the top off the defense. He can win on big plays. BTJ can win on short plays too. We saw that in his breakout performance toward the end of last season, but Travis Hunter can do a lot with the football in his hands, and I would expect the Jaguars to put it there a good amount as soon as week 1 of this season.
Yeah, see, I like the Travis Hunter ADP. This is pretty much, as I recall, where Malik Neighbors was going at this point, or maybe just after the NFL draft. Neighbors was a big riser. I don't think Hunter's going to get there because of the presence of Brian Thomas Jr., but sure. I don't know. I mean, I feel like we sort of know what a lot of the guys who are being drafted around Travis Hunter are. Not saying they don't have big ranges of outcome, but I feel like Hunter, you take him late in the 5th round. This is how you win fantasy leagues. I'm totally fine. In fact, I would say he's being drafted too late.
I'll just say this. I don't mind the ADP. I don't think this is reflective of where he's going to get drafted. So just based on our ADP compared to most drafts that I've seen, it was really more the receivers that are going after him. I like a few of those guys better. So that's why I put him on this list. But I think he's going to, if you tell me I get Travis Hunter around 5, I'm perfectly fine with it.
Okay. Dave, let's see the names that you're looking at as kind of bad values to start. And you wanted to talk about the quarterback position in general. I mentioned in our previous segment, 5 of them going in the top 40, one of them being Joe Burrow. Now, our leagues are 6-point per passing touchdown for the most part. I think all of the drafts that have been done in this ADP have been 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. What stands out to you?
I just think that it's still commonplace to see quarterbacks getting taken too soon. I agree with Jamey that Lamar is probably the most egregious of the bunch since he is the first one off the board. I like Josh Allen better. I like his consistency. I think that Jaden Daniels might even be better than Lamar Jackson in his second season. I'm not going to deny that Lamar Jackson isn't an elite fantasy quarterback. I just wouldn't reach for him. I wouldn't reach for any of these guys. If I can't get a quarterback at a fair value, I'm going to wait on draft day and find 1, maybe even 2 quarterbacks toward the back half of my draft. I'm going to steal them from the rest of my league. And while others in my league are going to reach for non-quarterbacks, or reach for quarterbacks, I should say, I'm going to take non-quarterbacks at 18th overall in round 3, where a lot of these other elite quarterbacks are going. I think Brock Bowers is going too soon too. 15th overall, that seems way too rich for a guy who's a difference maker at his position, but not to the point where Travis Kelce was once upon a time. I think his opportunities are going to fade a little bit because this Raiders offense is changing. They couldn't run the ball worth a damn last year. Now they've got the best rookie running back in the draft class, and maybe the best rookie running back since Saquon Barkley came into the league. That's Ashton Genty. He's going to take a lot of work. He's going to score a lot of touchdowns. That makes me nervous with Brock Bowers. I wouldn't take Bowers honestly, until round 3, that just means I'm never going to get him. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Sam Laporta, I feel like those guys are like a half round too soon. There are some other wide receivers that I would take before JSN and other players at other positions before I would take Laporta. And then DeAndre Swift, nearly a full round too soon. I'm not convinced that he's going to be the lead back for Chicago. I'm also not convinced that he's going to get many goal line carries for Chicago because he's never really done that over the course of his career, and he's been below 14 PPR points each of his last 3 seasons.
I actually love the value for Swift. He was one of the guys I was going to put on the list, but I saw Dave had him on his, players that he doesn't like at the cost. To me, you're looking at a guy that if he does hit as the lead running back for a Bears team that added 3 offensive linemen, should have a better play caller. Right now, the guys that he's competing with, Roshan Johnson and a 7th-round rookie, I mean, there's an opportunity here for him to be in a very good spot, and you're getting him at such a great price for potentially a top 20 running back. So I like actually the potential for him. And I do agree with Dave that Bowers is going a little bit too soon, but we know how fantasy managers, when you want to get a guy, you're not going to be able to get him in round 3. You're probably not going to be able to get him if you wait. So if you are picking at the back end of round 1 and you feel like he has the most upside, and you do look at it, yes, Genty's presence and maybe the addition of Besh and the other rookie wide receiver that they drafted. Geno Smith is a big quarterback upgrade for what they had a year ago. And so the quality of passes, if the volume is anywhere close to what it was, should have an opportunity to keep Bowers at a very high level. So I do think he should be drafted in round 2. I think he should be the second tight end off the board behind Trey McBride. But I actually love the value for DeAndre Swift. So I would certainly take him at that cost.
We've talked about some of our favorite values, some of our least favorite values based on the early average draft position. I'm interested to see how the ADP changes over the next month and a half. Okay, coming up next on Fantasy Football Today, it's Fill in the Blank, and we'll be right. Get it? Take a blank? Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. When I was in school, guys, I certainly preferred multiple choice, but right now I'm all about fill in the blank. Let's do this. Okay. The first round, first of all, that joke was blank.
Not
terrible.
Okay. The first round pick that worries me the most is blank.
Saquon Barkley.
I think he's the most obvious one. Malik Neighbors also, just because he wasn't so consistent last year and his quarterback upgrade isn't that big of an upgrade, he would also make the list for me.
Okay. And Jamey, real quick, what worries you about Saquon Barkley?
All the work that he had last year in the history of 2,000-yard rushers the following season. So Barkley should still be good. He should still be drafted in round 1. But I think based on some of the drafts that we've seen where he's going in some cases number 1 overall or a top 3 overall pick, I think you're going to be a little bit disappointed. And let's not forget the Madden curse as well.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be a story, Adam, on CBSSports.com all about the track record of running backs who have had as much work as Saquon had last year. You need to read it before you draft Saquon Barkley this year.
Oh, I would love to find my research on the curse of the number 1 pick. I'm going to find it. It's so bad.
I mean, just look at Football Outsiders, curse of 370. They've done it for years.
It's actually Jamar Chase would qualify because he's going to be the number 1 pick. The first overall pick in fantasy for something like 7 of the last 8 years has been a pretty big bust. All right, next up, my favorite late round pick is blank.
You know who I'm getting late? Yeah, that's a great answer. That's the backup in Philadelphia. That's a great answer. I've been getting Jared Goff late. And I know last year was an outlier for him, and I guess I can't expect him to be as good as he was last year. But even if he's 90% of what he was last year, that's a good fantasy quarterback, and I can get him in the double-digit rounds.
My favorite one is Cedric Tillman. You saw those 3 games after they traded Amari Cooper last year. 2 of those were with Jameis Winston. With Joe Flacco at quarterback, and you look at the receiving core right now, maybe Deontay Johnson could be a factor for the Browns. But Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku are going to command targets. I think Tillman's going to have a big opportunity, especially as a big play threat. So as long as Flacco starts, Tillman may end up returning number 3 wide receiver value.
Next up, blank is too old, and I won't draft him.
I hate to say Mike Evans, but it's Mike Evans for me.
I'll draft Mike Evans. I'm just not going to reach for Mike Evans. Same thing with Travis Kelce. The one guy who's really old that I don't think I'm going to take at all is Aaron Rodgers.
Okay. I think Kelsey is a pretty good one. Last year was just so interesting because it just redefined how we view age in so many players. But Kelsey certainly, I think, has been showing his age. And Aaron Jones, another guy I'd throw in there, although he's going pretty late. The year 2 wide receiver who will be overdrafted is blank.
That could be Neighbors because, I mean, it's the easiest case to make because he's going top 10 and I love him, but he could disappoint if he's inconsistent like he was last year.
Yeah, Neighbors is the easy answer. You know, I mean, you look at Brian Thomas, he's going to be a top 15 overall pick, and Ladd McConkey's probably going to end up being a top 25 overall pick. So all three of those guys fall in this category. But man, it's just so hard to overlook what they did last year and hopefully can continue to do, especially in the case of Neighbors. I think it's a big quarterback upgrade. And you look at the situation for the Jaguars, I think Liam Cohen's going to be fantastic for that entire passing game. So I guess if I had to pick one, maybe it's McConkey, just because if the Chargers run the ball as much as they can and maybe want to, then McConkey could be a little bit of a disappointment.
The tight end with the best value is blank.
Maybe Evan Ingram, just with the situation in Denver, opportunity is there to be second on the team in targets. He's been great in all of his first stops, rookie year with the Giants, first year in Jacksonville. Hopefully it's the same thing here in Denver. And I think Bo Nix and Sean Payton will lean on him quite a bit.
David Njoku's ADP is after 90th overall. I know you can get Evan Ingram later. I actually like that answer a lot. People are sleeping on Ingram. But Njoku, if I can get him in round 8, especially in full PPR, with all the quarterback issues that they've got in Cleveland, they need somebody who could be a reliable short area target. That'll be Njoku. I like that value.
Is that better than Tyler Warren, 118th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I love
fill
Warren,
in the blank.
yes.
Fill in the blank on this one. Darren Waller will be blank.
A non-factor.
Someone you'll be adding off the waiver wire and then never feel comfortable starting.
Caleb Williams will be blank.
Borderline
a breakout
quarterback. Okay.
All right, borderline starter for Dave, a breakout quarterback for Jamey. Jamey, what are you thinking about Caleb Williams this year?
I mean, it's a great opportunity. Coaching upgrade is huge. Offensive line upgrade is huge. And, 2 additional weapons with hopefully a better Rome Odunze and a better DJ Moore. And so everything around him is better. If he can live up to the pre-draft hype that he had last year when he was number 1 overall pick, we could be looking at the next fantasy quarterback that everybody's coveting.
Bold prediction. The first time ever the Bears are going to have a 4,000-yard passer. What do you think?
Totally agree.
I'm not sure I agree with it, but I'm throwing it out there anyway. Last one. George Pickens will be blank.
A little better than his ADP because of his situation. I'm kind of glad he got traded to Dallas.
A touchdown or a bust fantasy option.
So that means, sounds like Dave is going to be more willing to draft George Pickens. We already heard from Dave talking about George Pickens earlier in the show. Jamey, you're not feeling it with Pickens?
No, I like Pickens a lot. I just don't think we're going to get a lot of targets in his direction. So even if he's second on the team in targets, it's going to be close between him and Jake Ferguson. I totally agree with Dave said. The run game right now looks suspect for the Cowboys, but CeeDee Lamb commands so many targets. I don't think that changes. And if something happens to Dak Prescott, as we saw last year, 32 years old, coming off the hamstring injury, then this offense completely craters, and he is not going to be a happy camper. So I think when Pickens does not score touchdowns, he's not going to be a very useful fantasy option.
Could
Dave,
be true.
you think the targets? You think the targets will be close between him and Ferguson? Because I'm hoping they are not.
No, I don't think so. I still think CeeDee Lamb will be the guy, but I think they added Pickens so that defenses had to contend with somebody else. They can't focus all of their coverage on CeeDee Lamb anymore. And I think it'll benefit both guys. It's going to be one of those situations, just like it is on so many other teams that have 2 really good wide receivers, where they both get good volume. Lamb more than Pickens. Pickens won't be as consistent, but where you can draft him, I think it's going to be worth it. I think he can finish as a high-end number 3 fantasy receiver.
Yeah, I think the thing with him at least is that he's a big play guy. So even if he doesn't get that many targets, he can do a lot with them, hopefully. Maybe someone who's going to be better in non or half PPR than full PPR. All right, that's going to do it for Fill in the Blank. We got one segment left, everybody. Don't go anywhere. We're answering your questions when we come back on Fantasy Football Today. We are going to be answering your questions all season long. Let's get started here with Mason, who's in a 12-team PPR keeper league. He's keeping Neighbors in the 5th. Should he go with Daniels in the 11th or Bucky Irving in the 14th?
Oh, that's tough, man. I love the values of Daniels and Irving more than Neighbors, but I get why you'd want to keep Neighbors in the 5th. They're all really good. I think I'd keep Bucky. I would certainly draft Bucky before Daniels this year.
1 QB league, I'm keeping Bucky Irving. Superflex or 2 QBs, Daniels easy.
Yes.
Yeah, but just to kind of throw it back here to Mason, should he just throw back Neighbors? You kind of referenced that, Dave. Should he keep
Daniels?
Daniels?
I don't hate it. Especially if you can keep these players for multiple years at these late round values, I would do that.
All right. Something to think about. This is from Daddy O. Is Chris Godwin a steal? And I can't read well, so I'm not going to read the rest of it. Is Chris Godwin a steal?
If he's healthy, he is. I mean, if he's healthy, as you look at what he did last year, prior to getting hurt, he was, top 3 fantasy wide receiver, and Mike Evans is 32. And even with the addition of Ibuka, I still think Godwin can be a go-to guy, if not the go-to guy for Baker Mayfield. So the later he falls, the better off he'll be.
I would agree.
Sorry. Let's see what's next here. Oh, I love this question. Who's your favorite at cost of the Bills pass catchers? Jamey.
I think both Kincaid and Coleman can break out this year. Khalil Shakir is my favorite, and he's going in a spot where you can draft him as, in some cases, a 4th wide receiver, and he can easily be a top 30 caliber guy. He's got to score more touchdowns, but Kincaid is basically free on draft day. Going back to your question about favorite late round pick, he's one of those guys for me. And the same thing with Keon Coleman. Year 2 breakout would not be a surprise.
I would draft Coleman first. He played hurt last year, and it was really more of a growing year for him. Certainly fits the profile of a second-year breakout at wide receiver.
Next. Okay, from Aaron. I believe that both Ramondre Stevenson and Cooper Kupp can finish as RB or wide receiver 25 to 30. What's your rebuttal to that statement?
I would agree that could be where they finish, and that makes me not excited to draft either one of them. Tack on that both have a younger player working alongside them at their respective positions. And in the case of Cooper Kupp, he's injury prone. We've seen it from him. He might get off to a good start. There's no question. But if his knees start to give out, then he's not even going to be worth rostering, much less putting in your fantasy lineup. Ramondre Stevenson's a fumble away from having Trayvon Henderson become the best, not the best, the second best rookie running back in fantasy this year.
Don't draft him in that range, but they certainly could finish in that range.
Next, please. All right. From next. Is Jaden Blue the only true upside case for the Dallas backfield?
I think you make a case for Javonte Williams, even though he's older. But, I mean, Jaden Blue has got hopefully the most upside, being a rookie running back and a guy that can, be a little bit more explosive. But I still would I still will draft Javonte first.
Javante's got the inside track on playing passing downs. I don't think Jaden Blue is going to have that role at all. He is exciting. He is flashy. He's also very small, not a ton of experience. I would be hesitant to take him unless it's the double-digit rounds.
Javonte is so interesting to me because he had a very serious knee injury a couple of years ago, and he said that he finally feels like he's back to himself. So he'll have the inside track, as Dave mentioned, to passing downs, maybe more. I don't think Jaden Blue is the only upside back. All right. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We appreciate it. If you enjoyed the show, you can watch or listen to our podcast 5 days a week, Fantasy Football Today, anywhere you listen to podcasts. I want to thank Dave Richard and Jamey Eisenberg. It's been a lot of fun back here on CBS Sports Network, and we'll talk to you next time. I'm Adam Azer. Have a great day.